Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this brand new channel, CXC Help. So on this channel, we'll be going through the CSEC syllabuses and later CAPE syllabuses of multiple subjects, including subjects like Caribbean history and principles of business. And we're gonna be doing over some more, but right now we're going to history and POP specifically, right? So I hope you guys please subscribe, tell your friends about this channel, and I hope you enjoy this video. And I hope you enjoy this video because on this channel we're gonna be doing stuff like some past papers. That's also gonna be going through syllabus like how we're going through it today, and so you guys can better understand the syllabus and how it works, right? So let's start. Let's begin. So today we're gonna be about Caribbean history, the CXC syllabus, theme one, Indigenous people and Europeans. We're going to start with the settlement patterns. So later we'll get to like the Taínos and Kalinagos and the Mayans. But today we're going to focus on the settlement patterns of people moving from Africa all the way to the Americas. Right? Okay. So first, um, the syllabus will be taught by section. So I'm trying to update it by syllabus. Later there will be a playlist where you can watch everything in order depending on what you want to watch. Also, I hope I'm not sure, but when you have longer videos, there will be more replaced and there will be time codes to tell you where to go to get to which part you want to go to because they want you to search what you want. First, before we start discuss about the syllabus, start going through the syllabus, you have to know about the syllabus, right? So if you didn't know already, this is CSEC Caribbean History Syllabus is divided into three papers. So first paper consists of 60 multiple choice items based on the entire Caribbean History Syllabus. And paper 2 consists of 18 questions with 2 questions on each of the 9 themes. So the paper is divided into 3 sections and candidates are required to answer only 3 questions, one from each section. To give an example, um, if section 1 covers theme 1, Indigenous People and Europeans, theme 2, Caribbean economy and slavery, right? Then you won't have to do all questions. You pick one question from all the things that they give you and you do that question specifically, right? For some questions might be some structured questions where it asks you to answer the question, answer parts of each question. For some reason, I give it like an essay. You have to write about each of them you write about the questions in an essay. And then we know the multiple choice questions are based on the entire syllabus. Also, if you are doing this at school, you will have a school-based assessment where um, sorry, where you will be. I think let me explain to you. I think if you go to school, your teacher will give you an SPA, but that you have to do, that will contribute to your marks for the syllabus. If you are a private candidate, you have to do a paper three. You can find more about that on the actual CSEC site. So if you want more, well, with paper three, if you're an individual candidate, you can go there. Okay. Alright. So this is theme one: Indigenous peoples and Europeans. I'm going over the settlement patterns. So today we're only doing the we're doing objective one. So the six objective. Today we're doing objective one. Our next video on the syllabus, we will be doing um objective video, and then we're gonna try to do 4, 5, and 6 in another video. Three videos complete this theme, right? Let's begin. So first, migration to the New World. So the first people to inhabit the Caribbean region were indigenous people or the pre-Columbian Indians as they were also called. So the indigenous people migrated from Asia and settled in the Americas and the Caribbean and established a way of life in these regions. Most people believe that the first inhabitants came to the Americas from Asia between 15 to 20,000 years ago. This was during the Fourth Ice Age when large parts of the earth were covered with ice and lakes were frozen. All this time, the Bering Strait, which is the natural water which separates Alaska from the coast of Siberia in northeastern Asia, was said to be forming an ice bridge. Right? So, um, so we have this fourth ice age. So back 15 20,000 years ago, the fourth ice age, people were in many people were in Asia, right? And because, as I think we learn later, as because at this time we didn't have all the modern day tools that we do have, or what we can do to, or processed meats and foods like that. In that time, they really had to be going where the animals are going to get food, so that they can buy clothing for themselves, so they can make clothing for themselves, so they can provide food for themselves, so they can actually survive in this world, right? So what they do was that they would just follow the animals wherever they go. So where the animals go, they went. So during the fourth ice age, right, when the the Bering Strait, which was um a, a stretch of water, right, when because of it was frozen and covered with ice, the Bering Strait become a place where animals could just walk across, and so follow them because they needed the food and they needed the clothing, right? Early man depended on animals for food and clothing, especially since the ice age had caused fruits and herbs to become scarce, right? So that's another thing because, as you know, if there's frozen ice all around us, then obviously the fruits and the herbs that are coming from the land become scarce because when they try to grow, they can't grow because ice, right? So these hunters are what we call nomadic, right? So they travel from place to place in search of food and shelter. These hunters were following herds of animals like mammoths, deer, and caribou without knowing that they were crossing from one continent to another. These Asian immigrants are usually referred to as the Mongoloids, since they came from Mongolia to Central Asia. Please remember that. The Asian migrants who traveled from Asia to um, the Americas, we refer to them as Mongoloids. Yeah? So, these Asian migrants who settled in North America, they obviously continued to hunt. And as time passed, these people developed a way of life and also many different. They lived in small family units and made their homes from the skins of the animals they hunted. Their homes are called tents because during the next thousands of years, they wandered in many different directions. Those who occupied the same area spoke the same language and shared a common language, which are said to belong to a tribe. Some Americans live in eastern Canada, the Mohawk, while some occupy the bleak and barren Arctic regions. They were known as Eskimos. So some Americans, the ones that live in eastern Canada, they are referred to as the Mohawks, and people who occupy the bleak and barren Arctic regions were known as Eskimos. So in North America, the Amerindians settled in areas such as the Florida Peninsula and Alaska. Some also settled in the period of the Great Plains. Incas settled in countries such as Chile, Argentina, Nicaragua, and Peru. The Aztecs settled in Mexico, while the Mayans settled in the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, Honduras, parts of Belize, El Salvador, and southern Mexico. The Mayans, Incas, and Aztecs, each developed civilizations which flourished, and they were known as the Mesoamericans. Right? So, different types of Amerindians lived in different parts of North America. So we know that the Incas settled in Chile, well, actually not only North America, but the Americas itself. So the Incas settled in the countries such as Chile, Argentina, Nicaragua. Aztec were settled in Mexico. Mayans, we learn more about later actually, were settled in the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, Honduras, parts of Belize, El Salvador, southern Mexico. Mexico, sorry about that. Um, right? So the first group of Americans to arrive in the Caribbean. So remember, all these ones we just mentioned, they were most settled on the land masses. So North America, South America. The first group of Americans to arrive in the Caribbean were the Simonees, right? Or the Simonees. They settled in Cuba. They migrated north from Suriname, eastern Venezuela, and Guyana in South America. Now, archaeologists have not found much evidence in order to describe what they were like or how they lived. This is because they left very few artifacts behind, right? But we know that sometime afterwards, not exactly sure what time, civil names were followed by the Arawaks and the Kalinagas, also known as the Caribs, right? The Taino's original homeland was in the forest between the Orinoco and Amazon rivers in South America. And when we said the Taino's, we refer to the Arawaks. So the Arawak's original homeland was in the forest between the Orinoco and Amazon rivers in South America. They traveled in large canoes and usually settled on each island they encountered. Then after a few years, some moved on to another island. Mhm. The Arawaks were divided into two tribes, which are the Lucayos in the Bahamas and the Tainos in the Greater Antilles. So while they help you refer to the Tainos and Arawaks the same thing, they are, but they're really not. Because the Arawaks is the name of the people. Then you have two tribes, the Tainos and the Lucayos. But the Tainos are what we refer to as most because they look at it in the Greater Antilles, right? That means that they refer to all the big islands, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba. They're in they're in all the great islands, and in the Lucas were in the Bahamas. So while Lucas are in the Bahamas, so we need to remember this, by the way. The Lucas are Arawak. So sometimes we refer to them as just Tanos, but they're actually called Lucayos. But when you see, you say, okay, they're the same thing. Lucayos, they are Arawaks, they're Tanos, right? So the Kalinagas followed the Tanos into the Caribbean. And this is really because they were not a fan of the Tanos. Kalinagas and Tanos were always fighting each other. But I think we'll learn more about that later. But yes, because they're fighting each other so much, Kalinagas wanted to follow the Tanos into the Caribbean just so that they could be with them. And we'll learn more about that later, as I said before, right? So the Kalinagas live further south in the jungles around the Orinoco. If you want to what I'm talking about, remember that where the Tina's original home was in the forest, in the Orinoco and Amazon rivers in South America, right? And the Kalinagas, they live further south than them in the jungles around. They also move from island to island. So at each one, they follow the Tinas and push them out and establish themselves on the island. So they follow them, fought the Tainos, then push them onto the island and put themselves on the island and say, yes, we own this island. Right? The Tainos, who were fleeing their enemies, the Kalinagos, they then crossed into the Trinidad and continued to move further up the island chain. By the time the Europeans arrived in the Caribbean in 1492, the Tainos occupied mainly islands of the Great Antilles, which are Puerto Rico, Cuba, Hispaniola, and Jamaica. Taínos occupied the islands of the Great Antilles, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Hispaniola, and Jamaica. They also occupied countries, islands like the Bahamas and Barbados. Kalinagos occupied mainly the islands of the Lesser Antilles such as Trinidad, Dominica, and St. Vincent. We should note, and you should also note this, Trinidad and Puerto Rico were occupied by both the Taínos and the Kalinagos. To the answer, which places were both occupied by the Taínos and the Kalinagos? You say Trinidad and Puerto Rico, right? Taínos and Kalinagos in the Caribbean did not develop great civilizations like the Mayans, which we will learn about later, as I said before, or Incas. Rather, they are labeled as primitive in terms of culture. And we see that they're primitive because they didn't have the tools that the Mayans do. Like we learned that the Mayans built huge buildings and civilized in a way that advanced subjects like mathematics that we learn now. Taínos and the Kalinagos, they weren't like that, right? So the Americans dominated the region up until the of the Europeans in 1492, which we'll also learn more about later. So the coming Europeans saw drastic changes in the way of life of the Mandians and ensured their near extermination. So when the Europeans came, they've understand that Taínos are very friendly people. So they said, okay, we allow you to come on our island and stay here. But they took advantage of that and they made them be their own kind of not slaves, but made sure that they worked very hard for them. And they would work for the Europeans, and the Europeans also did something like rape them and do stuff like that. And they brought diseases that made the Taínos seem sick and stuff and how hard they had to work, which ensured their near extermination because if they didn't respect them, they'd probably kill you, right? But we'll learn more about that later. And that's it for today. I hope you guys love this video. If you have any ideas of what I can do to expand, maybe you want me to show some photos, because next time, don't worry, we're going to be showing photos of things Kalinagos to understand exactly about them. And in next video, we'll be talking about the Taínos, the Mayans, and the Kalinagos. So if you guys can stay tuned, please subscribe, please like, comment, share, please support.